Messi! It is the cleanest of clean finishes from the best on the planet.
It's time for the biggest sports stories.
Liverpool, the champions of Europe, are top of the world.
The biggest interviews.
That such a great spectacle is ruined by such thuggish behavior.
And all the analysis right here.
He's the one player that has the arrogance to think that he can play in any stadium in the world and any pitch in the world in front of any player in the world and take them on.
Every weekday, it's my sport, it's your sport. It's ZiFM Sport. Let's join the team for the biggest show in the world of sport on ZiFM Stereo. My station, your station.
Jam-packed show on tonight. You know how we do every Monday, Manic Monday. There's always so much to talk about from the weekend. Even during this pandemic, the show has to go on. Welcome to it. This is ZiFM Sport, Manic Monday, the lockdown edition. From their homes, you'll hear from Barry Manandi, Mike Madoda, Chris, and Alois Bunjira. I'm the producer. My name is Sean Tafirenyika. I hope you're staying at home and keeping safe as we fight together against the spread of the coronavirus. Loaded show lined up tonight. Being a Monday, we've got our Castle World Football Report. You don't want to miss out on that. We'll also endeavor to keep you updated with what's happening in the world of sport with our local news roundup and around the world in 60. Tonight, our feature will be on the impact of the coronavirus on local football. How has this global pandemic hit Zimbabwe in terms of football? Hit us up with your thoughts and contribution on what the impact of this pandemic is going to be. The handle is at ZiFM Sport on Facebook and Twitter. But before we get the thoughts of the Z team on that, let's kick things off with the local sports news roundup where Mike will give us rugby, athletics, and mixed martial arts news.
The Home Front. Local sports news and analysis.
We kick off with rugby, where the Zimbabwe Rugby Union is expected to announce an all-inclusive interim Bulawayo Metropolitan Rugby Football Board tomorrow after getting the green light from Union President Aaron Jani. The Zimbabwe Rugby Union dissolved the BMRFB board led by Craig Change, accusing it of paralyzing the smooth running of the game in Bulawayo despite its efforts to revive and expand the game in the province. ZRU Vice President, that's for the Southern Region, Martin Shonem, said names for the interim committee that will handle BMRFB's affairs for the next 2 years are awaiting Jani's approval. In athletics news, long-distance runner Isaac Mbofu says he has had to adjust his training schedule during the current 21-day coronavirus lockdown. Mbofu is one of the country's athletes fighting to qualify for the Tokyo Olympic Games that have been rescheduled to 2021 due to the COVID-19 global pandemic. Mbofu, Ethel Sibanda, and Ngonizashi Ncube were scheduled to compete in the Enschede Marathon this month, while Munyana Zijari was set to take part in the Hanover Marathon, but both events, which served as Olympic qualifiers, were cancelled. Mixed martial arts. Zimbabwe mixed martial arts champion Themba Gorimbo believes his title defense against Australian Lyle Karam at the Extreme Fighting Championship 84 event at Times Square in Pretoria, South Africa last month was enough to earn him a contract in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. UFC is the largest mixed martial arts promotion company in the world and is based in the United States. Gorimbo, who is the country's reigning sportsperson of the year, defeated Karam via submission inside 2 minutes and 6 seconds in the second round of the fight. It was Gorimbo's first title defense match against the previously undefeated Australian.
Hi, I'm Vario's coach Zdravko Logarušić, and you are listening to ZiFM Sport.
Sports with a difference.
Now, we've heard and seen the devastating impact of the coronavirus on all facets of life. There has been no exception. Now, football in Europe has been hit hard by the pandemic, and every day we learn more and more about the potential effects the pandemic could have on the game. And this is why we are zoning in on the game here at home. I'm talking about football. What is the impact of the pandemic on Zimbabwe football? There are specific and unique circumstances that are worthy of examination. I mean, most of the clubs depend on gate takings. Most players are on short-term contracts. What is going to happen with the already limited corporate partnerships? And on top of that, we have seen clips of international footballers staying fit and training from home Do our players have the same luxuries? Do they have the big yards at their houses? Do they have the gym equipment? Are they under the same strict diets as well? There's so much to look at. In fact, a good place for us to start is the impact on player contracts. And let's get more on that from Barry Manandi.
Right, now obviously this COVID-19 induced break in play, particularly in local football, brings about various issues. Chief among them, of course, being the contractual issues that relate to players in the main. Obviously, there are the contractual issues that relate to sponsors, that relate to grounds, etc., etc. But let's focus on the players. In Europe already, we've seen that there are various negotiations that are underway. We know the situation at Barcelona, where the players took a bit of a haircut in terms of their salaries in order to pay for all of the non-playing staff at Barcelona Football Club. And then we've got a Liverpool situation which is contrasting to Barcelona, where the non-playing staff was put on furlough. Furlough basically meaning that you're given a leave of absence from your particular job. So the non-playing staff at Liverpool were given a leave of absence from their work, meaning that there's no obligation for the club to really pay their salaries and wages. Now, those two contrasting scenarios already show us that there is a challenge contractually amongst football clubs in the main all over the world. Zimbabwe is not insulated, is not protected from that same scenario. So you look at the local scenario, bringing it back home. Issues such as a depressed revenue earning capacity by clubs, of course, the tenure of contracts, what are we talking about? You look at in Zimbabwe, when a player signs a contract, it's usually a year-long contract, and the year in football isn't necessarily January to December. Many of the times it's March, April to March, April the following year. Why? Because that's the time when we play our football. So does it mean that a player whose contract was coming to a conclusion at that time, or a player who was starting his contract in March and now we've taken a month, it could even turn out to be a 2-month break, doesn't mean that their contract is running at the moment, albeit that they're not conducting any football activity? And then even simpler than that is just the issue around, are players, can they be said to be working at the moment? I mean, you look at the world of work, it's certainly changed. All of us at ZiFM Sport here are delivering the show from home, from where we are. Many of the times, many of you, the ones who are working from home. So a lot of us are doing that. Now, football players are also employees and are working at the same time. Now, I think it's important for us to then classify what it means to say that a football player is actually working. Let's get the thoughts of Steve Kompela, of course, a coach out in South Africa, and he will let us know what his thoughts are on what constitutes work. He's now the head coach at Lamoville Golden Arrows, and of course had that stint with Kaizer Chiefs that ended abruptly. Let's hear Steve Kompela.
You come here, you only have 2 hours. Players must understand they don't get paid for playing. They get paid for training. Because how many matches you play in a month? Let's say 4 matches. Right. If you are earning 100,000, you are not earning 100,000 from 4 matches. You are earning 100,000 from before this match, the 6 days of preparation. Before this match. So this is just a final dress rehearsal. You get paid to train. So if a player does not accept the fact that training is more important than the match, then the match is non-existent, because by the time you go to the match, your preparation was not.
All right, now Steve Kompela's argument is basically simple, that a player is paid in order for him to train. And I subscribe to that argument, because if you look at the volume of work, a game is usually 90 minutes if we talk about the actual match. The match day is from about 9 o'clock until about 5 o'clock. The 9 o'clock being that you then congregate and go and have your pre-match meal and then travel to whatever stadium you're going to. You play your 90-minute game, and then after that you're done with work. So it can't be that players are being paid for 4 games a month. It's broader than that. So I subscribe to the fact that yes, players certainly do get paid in the mainly for training. So if you subscribe to that argument, then you've got to ask yourself that if players are at home and you have no capacity to track and trace whether they're actually putting work in, can they be said to be working? So consequently, they aren't technically working. Now, you've got a club that is not making any money, because in Zimbabwe, mainly clubs survive on match day revenue and then, of course, sponsorship being the major one. And chances are sponsorships are going to be affected by this break in play. But there's no match day revenue to speak of any, because there is no match day taking place. You've got a worker who technically you can't track whether they are working, so you can say that they aren't working. So the narrative writes itself. Chances are we are in the mood and in the frame where we're going to witness wage cuts. And I foresee that happening, yes, locally, but my appeal to clubs would be that they are humane about it. Remember, we're dealing with football players, we're dealing with employees of a club. So whenever those negotiations, those talks about wage cuts are being done, they have to be humane and think that these are family men, and women. They are breadwinners in many instances. So we need to make sure that whatever it is that we do, we are doing so in a manner that ensures that they are able to continue with life. We've all got to, yes, definitely share the burden and lighten the load. But of course, we have to make sure that we are being humane about it. There are outliers in any scenario. I understand that the owners and major sponsor of Ngezi Platinum Stars in the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League, Zimplats, was last week given a reprieve and are now considered an essential services. So they are continuing with operations. The question is, what sort of operations are they continuing with? Are they going to be able to export the platinum that they mine? Are they going to be able to sell it on the global market? What do the global markets look like at this stage? The globe has certainly felt the effects of COVID-19. And no doubt that the Zimbabwe, the Castle Lager Premier Soccer League, and even the leagues below that, Division 1, Division 2, are going to feel the effects of COVID-19 from an economic perspective. We all need to pull together, and together, only together, can we get through this.
A critical point from Barry on tenure of contracts. Our players in Zimbabwe usually get those short-term contracts on a yearly basis. It is almost unusual, if not unheard of players to get those 3, 4, 5-year contracts. So the impact of this pandemic has to bite hard. And I think that also ties into players getting paid to train. But like Barry said, it begs the question of whether clubs can monitor, ensure that players are training from home. Now, I doubt that they can monitor this, and it's simply would be savage for the clubs to say we're not paying you because we can't see that you're training. Let's move on to the impact of brands. We know brands are attached to football in the country. Let's find out from Chris the ways in which brands are being affected.
Local football is going to be affected positively and negatively by the coronavirus. And you're probably thinking, what could possibly be positive about this? But there are opportunities for brands even during this coronavirus pandemic and afterwards, when likely our league will begin again. So one of the most important things to note is that arena advertising that some of the local sponsors and brands were used to will not be as effective, because likelihood is after the shutdown has ended, the league will begin again, but will not be there won't be an audience permitted. Mass gatherings will likely not be allowed as yet. But what that does is it presents an opportunity for TV and radio, which is still incredibly popular in Zimbabwe. Broadcasters and media houses will be able to create interesting spaces for brands on their platforms. But what that requires for the brands is that brand managers need to then switch up, and instead of doing what they were used to, change the way in which they were presenting their brands to the same audience, which will be reached not physically at the stadium, but on TV and radio. Something else that's really important to note is that while major brands may be able to weather the financial implications of the postponement of our league, smaller brands may not. And it's also important to remember that brands with large budgets in Zimbabwe are not as many as we would think or we would like, but the smaller budget sponsors are there, and they're going to feel the impact a great deal more due to the cost of investment in our local football, whether it's in Division 1 and 2 or in the Premier League. And also coupled with our kind of shaky currency base, any investments that may have already been made may not be worth the same when the league does resume. So some of the things that they would have previously been able to do and stretch their investment, they may not be able to do so anymore because of the pandemic. Another thing that we might see is that brands may be forced to redirect their funding and their sponsorship. So because there'll be reduced visibility, sponsors may choose to go ahead and place their funds elsewhere. And in as much as there would be a plan to invest in local football, brands may be forced to redirect to, say for example, they were going to invest in a particular team. Instead of investing in that team, they may now be redirecting those funds to the coronavirus efforts, which from a marketing perspective and from a branding perspective have a lot more visibility and a guaranteed audience, because everyone's focus is at the moment on the coronavirus. The PSL, which was due to start, has not been able to start, and so haven't the rest of the divisions of our football. So there's an opportunity that already exists with coronavirus. So we may see a redirection of funds away from our local football into the coronavirus efforts themselves. Now, in terms of advertising and media placement, this is going to require, like I said, a lot from brand managers to switch up in terms of what they were used to in terms of sponsorship and their investment in local football. So over the next few months, fans are going to be congregating somewhere. They're not going to be congregating at stadiums. They may not congregate on TV and radio, but there is an opportunity in terms of these audience that have now migrated to other areas such as social media. And while the games are not being played, people still need entertainment. There's still a culture in the world where we need to be able to manage those audiences. So how do we manage those audiences and fill the void is to create opportunities on social media, on digital platforms for fan engagement. So this can be through a particular team, it can be through the PSL, but it is possible to still harness all of those potential eyeballs on the brand, but not necessarily on TV and radio because the league has not begun yet, but on social media. And we're seeing a lot of interesting things with our football teams, where instead of reporting on what their teams are up to and giving us information on their social media platforms, they've actually begun to have some gaming activities where they engage with their fans online, and that presents an opportunity for brands to place their brand there instead of waiting for the leagues to actually start. So the opportunities do exist for brand managers to take advantage of interesting activations instead of what we were used to. Esports, digital and social media is growing in the rest of the world, and we're going to be seeing soon sponsors that are placing themselves on those platforms. But also because of the delay of the league, there's an opportunity for local brands that have parent companies to align with their mother brand overseas. So where previously our league was running differently to the rest of Africa, to the rest of the world in terms of our timelines, we'll be able to push that forward. And what that does immediately is that for brands such as Casalaga that have mother brands, they're able to therefore then realign with the mother brand and obviously capitalize a lot more in terms of that investment, in terms of activations that are going on in the rest of the world as well. So in as much as coronavirus is switching up the way we do things, it's impacting our local football, there are so many really cool opportunities to take advantage of.
Z.
Great insight from Chris there. Brands care about visibility and reach, and right now without live football matches, that is compromised. An innovative way some brands are combating this is by sponsoring homemade videos from players. So we have seen players being more active on social media by posting their workout routines in their sponsors' gear. They are tagging corporates. They're doing live chats to communicate their accessibility, and it's certainly a tool that brands can adopt here at home. Now, there was a video clip which surfaced of Brazilian star Neymar practicing with his dogs yesterday. He was working on his dribbling, his turn of pace, while his dogs chased him down. Now, just to paint a picture, Neymar's yard is really nice. It's got a really nice football surface. It's about the size of a 5-a-side pitch. That's how he's keeping fit. But what about our local footballers? Let's hear from Alois on the impact the pandemic has had on training and fitness on our local players.
we are football lovers, and by now the Premier Soccer League should be in full swing, but we haven't kicked a ball yet, and the season was postponed indefinitely, and we are under lockdown right now as we speak. But the bad thing is that the clubs had started pre-season in January, and by March they were ready to play, but then that is the time it was announced that the season has been postponed. This really affects the players, this affects the team, this affects everybody, all the stakeholders in football. It affects revenue, it affects the contracts, it affects the brand and all that. But my main concern is about the fitness of the players. Obviously by March most of the players were already fit, because usually pre-season you're given 6 weeks to actually get fit, and from what I know is that most clubs were ready to play. Now that the season has been postponed indefinitely and clubs have been sent home, players have been sent home, and clubs are not training at all, it becomes very, very difficult to maintain fitness. I don't know what is going to happen when the season really starts to kick off. I'm not sure if the Premier Soccer League will give the clubs another 6 weeks of pre-season so that they can actually get up. But if I was a player, or if I was a club, I would actually put our players on a program so that they actually maintain fitness throughout the lockdown, throughout the time that the season is suspended and all that, so that when the season really kicks on, then the players are actually fit. Not fully fit, because you cannot be really fully fit if you are not playing games. If you don't have match fitness is important. But you just need to maintain a level of fitness. So players, professional players should know that, they need to maintain their fitness. Obviously, they have to jog around at home. There is lockdown and all that. But I think that I think it's allowed for you to jog around your neighborhood and do aerobic exercises even at home in your dining room and all that. It's quite very possible. I do it sometimes, and I actually feel good. I actually feel fit doing it and all that. I jog, I go to the nearby park, I run by myself and all that. I think for professional players, they also need to do that. They can't do anything else because the gyms are closed. You can go to the gym and train, but the gyms are closed, so you can't do training anywhere else. The best thing that footballers could actually do individually is to train at home, or go out there, look for a park and run in the park, or go out there nearest sports field that you can find and run there and maintain your fitness, because as a player you need to feel that kind of fitness yourself. Availability of training facilities, we all know that they are not available. There are no gyms, the sports grounds are closed and all that. All you need to do, find a space where you can run, where you can do aerobics exercise, and where you can actually do your physical exercises as well. You can still use your body weight. You can actually be unorthodox and actually maybe take a break, or take a makeshift weights and all that. As a player, you know that this is what you need, so you need to do that. I think clubs should actually encourage their players to actually go out there and just be innovative about their fitness, because you can't wait and say the gyms are closed, then you sit and sleep. Because losing fitness is very easy, but gaining fitness is very, very difficult. So it's actually easier to maintain, because by March players were fit, so they actually need to maintain that fitness. So that's what I advise to all football clubs, that while your players are on lockdown, encourage them to train at home. Just shift around the furniture at home and do aerobics work. I have done it. You can skip a rope, you can use your resistance rope, you can do your squats, you can do your lunges, you can do your sit-ups, you can do your push-ups, you can do a lot of things to maintain fitness. And like I said, for endurance work, you can actually do your shuttle runs in your yard. You can actually do shuttle runs in your yard. Or like I said as well, get a ball, juggle around, play with your kids, or play with your friends, play with your brothers at home and all that. Or better still, find a space somewhere. Sometimes there are recreational places around us. You just go there, it's deserted, there are no people there. Go to the stadium, to the field, go to the park, run, make yourself sweat, keep yourself fit. I think that's the best way that players should actually do to maintain fitness until this coronavirus goes away. But otherwise, there's nothing else that we can do. As you can see, that the coronavirus has caused a lot of havoc for everything, and sport has been affected as well. And like I said, for us soccer lovers, we are in distress. We are distressed, and we are waiting, and we are hoping that this coronavirus goes away very soon and we start watching our football. And for us to enjoy good football, players have to be fit, so they need to maintain fitness. Like I said, they have to do it the way I've said it.
Now, Alois has suggested ways players can keep fit. It does call for innovation, and yes, the onus is on players to keep fit. But I wonder if clubs are deliberately making programs that players should follow. I mean, taking into consideration where a player lives and their circumstances, clubs should be able to set up tailored training methods. But is this happening, or are they waiting for the lockdown to end? My guess is that they're probably waiting on the lockdown to end, and we'll probably see our players sluggish if and when the season begins. But there really could be more innovative in this regard. Let's switch gears now and let's talk about money. What's the concern when it comes to revenue generated through football activities, Mike?
Well, one of the biggest concerns for our local football clubs will certainly be the impact the coronavirus pandemic is having and is going to have on finances. I came across a report the other day that's talking of as many as 40 clubs in English football folding up if this season is declared null and void, and nothing is done in mitigation against the projected losses in income. If it's true for the lucrative English Premier League and its divisions, then it's true for the rest of the world. So the well-heeled leagues of the world are peering frightfully into the books, trying to assess and anticipate what the overall impact is going to be. And it's a conversation that's well worth having here at home. Now, the first and obvious impact that the pandemic is having in the short term is on gate takings. Most, if not all, our local clubs are dependent on gate takings one way or the other, especially the three traditional crowd pullers, Dynamos, Highlanders and Caps United. Some salaries, administrative costs, performance bonuses and the like are funded from the revenue that the clubs accrue at the gate. With no matches being played, no money is coming in. Also impacted by that are the usual matchday earners in the football ecosystem. Transport operators who would normally ferry fans to and from matches, vendors who make a living selling their wares at games, security companies employed to maintain order, the different city councils who own stadiums and charge a higher fee, the ZRP, that's the Zimbabwe Republic Police, as well as the Premier Soccer League and ZiFM, who receive a cut from every ticket sold. By now, our leagues would have kicked off. The Castle Premier Soccer League and the lower divisions, and some sort of revenue would be trickling in from the gate, helping the less affluent clubs to take care of certain peripheral costs. But that is not the case, and it's presenting a real challenge for our clubs who don't have many streams of revenue. Let me move on to the next area of concern as far as revenue is concerned. For those clubs that have sponsorships to mitigate against expenditure, even those corporate partnerships are being stress tested at the moment. Most marketers who initiate these arrangements are looking for relationships that are mutually beneficial, with their brands, products and services leveraged on the teams that they are on the dance floor with. And these are companies who have been forced to shut down and at the very best minimize production and operations. Simply put, most are not making money at the moment. If they can't make money, it only means at some point expenditure is going to be questioned and then ultimately cut. And most Zimbabwe companies will always give marketing the chop when faced with declining revenues. Clubs at the moment must be fearing that dreaded phone call from the corporate partner that could signal at best a revision of terms and at worst a cancellation. Now, put aside the top tier where you find corporate teams, FC Platinum, Yezi Platinum Stars, Chicken Inn, Triangle United, ZBC, Kariba, Manika Diamonds, the traditional big boys, the military teams, the sides owned by wealthy benefactors, Yada and Herentals come to mind. The majority of clubs in Zimbabwe are owned by individuals or syndicates who are making massive sacrifices and huge investments out of pocket to keep their teams going month on month, season to season. Most of these people are local entrepreneurs who have had their businesses interrupted by the pandemic and have taken a financial hit that may see them cut back and eventually hold back on the investment they are making in football. This is the challenge that is facing many teams in the lower divisions, where corporate partnerships and sponsorships are rare. The owners will simply not spend, and this will lead to many a team's only source of revenue drying up. So, These are challenging times for local football, and teams are going to have to live according to their means, especially with little or no revenue coming in as a result of the inactivity caused by the coronavirus pandemic.
Gate takings are a major income stream for our clubs, and having that taken away creates a dire financial strain. In addition to that, Mike really explained the intricate web of the various services impacted by the pandemic because of their reliance and their relation to football. Now, you know, the example he rightfully pointed out, services like transport. Now, internationally, clubs have instituted a raft of measures. We've heard of non-playing staff being put on schemes such as a leave of absence. Some are cutting salaries, but some of the worthy clubs will continue to pay their non-playing staff. I say this to point out that some clubs are at least doing something internationally. So the situation is that most of our clubs here back at home don't have the same capacity. And like Mike said, our clubs will have to live within their means because, quite frankly, most of them can't institute tangible mitigating measures against the impact of this pandemic. So I hope that this serves as a lesson that football in Zimbabwe is a big industry and should be treated as such. Our football clubs really have to move towards thinking of the club as a business entity which is not mainly reliant on gate takings and sponsorship. Let's take a bit of a break with our power play on a Manic Monday. But before that, it's Around the World in 60 with Chris as we catch up with the latest in the international sports news.
Around the World in 60 seconds. International sports news.
We take off in Monaco, where Charles Leclerc proved that Formula One speed was more than effective in the world of esports yesterday as the Ferrari driver dominated a star-studded grid to win the sport's second virtual Grand Prix in a field which included Alex Albon, Jenson Button, and cricketer Ben Stokes. Leclerc, a two-time Formula One race winner, outclassed them all as he shone in his online debut by converting his pole start into a comfortable victory around Melbourne's Albert Park circuit. We head over to Australia, where fast bowler Pat Cummins said he would love to play the T20 World Cup but acknowledged the awful impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Cricket is currently on hold around the world due to the outbreak, but Cummins told reporters that it would be great to see the World Cup go ahead in Australia between October and November. Australia had to cancel their limited over series against New Zealand last month after just one game, and their two-test series against Bangladesh in June could also be affected due to the spread of COVID-19. We touched down in Bulgaria, where heavyweight boxer Kubrat Pulev said he will donate half of his purse from his world heavyweight title fight against Anthony Joshua to help medical workers fight the coronavirus. Joshua's world title defense against Pulev, which was originally scheduled for the 20th of June at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London, has been postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. A new date for the fight is still being worked on, but when it does go ahead, Pulev, one of Bulgaria's most popular athletes, is planning to use his proceeds to help battle the pandemic.
You're tuned into ZiFM Stereo, my station, your station. This is the lockdown edition of ZiFM Sport. Tonight we are talking about the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on Zimbabwe football. Have your say, your way on social media. The handle is at ZiFM Sport on Facebook, on Twitter. You can also hit us up directly on social media in our own individual capacities. Now, up next is the Castle World Football Report. We'll go around the world to hear the biggest stories in football, as well as get the best opinions and analysis from the Z team. Alois will kick us off on the continent in the South Africa ABSA Premiership. We'll then go to the Premier League with Mike. Barry will key us in with La Liga. Chris will tell us about the latest news in the Bundesliga, and we'll end it off in Serie A with Mike.
Alcohol may be hazardous to health if consumed to excess. The operation of machinery or driving after the consumption of alcohol is not advisable. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18 years.
Castle Lager is more than just beer. It's pure liquid gold, crafted from the finest local ingredients to deliver a taste that is somewhat dry, somewhat bitter, but never sweet. It's the taste that stood the test of time. It all comes together with a Castle.
The Castle Lager Premier Soccer League Report on ZiFM Sport. The beating drum. The roaring fans. Take a ride on the wild side with the Africa Report on ZiFM Sport.
Our Castle World Football Report kicks off here on the continent as we discuss the ABSA Premier Soccer League in South Africa. The South African football pundits say over-reliance on star players has also contributed to the goal-scoring problems in the South African ABSA Premiership. The attackers of the ABSA Premiership have been criticized for being inconsistent, and no player has hit the 20-goal mark in the last 8 years. Siyabonga Nomvede is the last player to score 20 goals in a single season, and he achieved this rare feat in the 2011-2012 campaign. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people really talking about that, saying that over-reliance of star players, but I don't really agree, because when you look at star players actually come out of being consistent. Star players come out of being the top scorer of the team, or providing assist and all that for the team, being outstanding for the team. That's how a player becomes a star player. So I don't really know what they mean when they say they are over-relying on star players. Let's say, for example, like Mango in Frank Mango at Orlando Pirates. He was not a star player when he came to Orlando Pirates. He started on the bench and he started showing his true colors. Then he started scoring goals. So to say that the Orlando Pirates are not scoring goals because they are over-relying on Frank Mango, I don't really think that's the case. I just think that the big problem here that we are facing is that players that are supposed to be scoring goals are not scoring goals. Probably it's because of the formations. It might be players being used in the wrong position, or just a lack of form. When you look at Kaizer Chiefs. Kaizer Chiefs have been scoring goals. They've been on top of the log and all those. But then the lack of form for Samir Nikovic, all of a sudden contributed to them not scoring goals. I think it's because that he has been scoring goals for them, and the team has been. I can't say that they've been over relying on him, but it's just that the other players that have to come to the party. Look at Kamabilia. He's a star player. He is not scoring. When you look at Bernard Parker, he's a star player. He's not scoring. So it's actually a team thing for me. When I look at it, I think it's actually a team thing. And we look at Amazulu as well. One player has been scoring goals. Why has one player been scoring goals? And then when he goes off form, what is happening? So it's about the team. The team is not balanced. I think the coaches need to come to the party. They need to realize that their team is not firing, and they need to work out. And then the players also, to themselves individually, they need to realize that they are supposed to be scoring. They are employed to score goals. If you are a striker for a team, you're supposed to score goals. So for me, it has happened as well here in Zimbabwe that, players don't really take their jobs seriously. When you're a striker, you just don't rely on the training session that the coach gives you. You actually go out of your way to do extra training, do drills, go out there and sharpen your scoring skills, your technical ability. We have always talked about muscle memory. Muscle memory is all about practice, doing things over and over again, so that when that one chance comes in the game, your muscles remember automatically that this is the chance that I've been training, I've been doing a training, so I need to hit it this way. You don't even have to think about it. Your muscle will just remember how to hit that ball. So it takes practice. A lot of these youngsters nowadays, they don't practice, they don't train. They just go to training. After training, they just rush to their phones. They're on WhatsApp, they're on Facebook, they're on social media, Instagram. They forget that you need extra training so that you can actually sharpen your skills and help the team win matches.
The league that makes football oh so beautiful, where artistry and strokes of genius are the order of any day, where the game is played with a smile and the little master creates his magic.
It's Lionel Messi!
All the news from the Spanish La Liga on ZiFM Sport.
In La Liga, former Tottenham striker Midu believes Zinedine Zidane has added nothing to Real Madrid in his second stint in charge. Zidane returned to the helm of the La Liga Giants in March last year, having won 3 Champions League titles with Real Madrid during his first spell. Midu, who played for Spurs, Ajax and Egypt, of course you remember his stellar career with the Pharaohs of Egypt, criticized Zidane over his second stint, saying it was a mistake for the Frenchman to return. He had this to say. He says, "I really like Real Madrid. They are my favorite team in the league. This was him speaking to AS. From my point of view, Zidane didn't add anything to Madrid on his return, as there is a saying that says, do not marry the same woman twice. Well, Zidane certainly did that. He married the same woman twice, and the second coming has not been as good as the first, certainly. But you look at where he's gotten the club. He's won the Supercopa de España. He is sitting second in La Liga at the moment, and then he's into the last 16 of the Champions League. Is it a poor season? Yes, you've got to say that, because if you look at Barcelona is in all kinds of turmoil. They have been dropping points where they wouldn't have been expected to drop points. They haven't been playing as well as they could have. For the first time in ages, Barcelona changed their manager midway through a season, Quique Setién coming in. So that's a sign of a club in strife. The result should have been that Real Madrid would immediately take advantage of that, the Barcelona slip, as it were. Real Madrid has failed to do that, and that is a direct result of Zinedine Zidane. So if you contextualize it in that fashion, you've got to say to yourself, yeah, Zidane's second coming hasn't been as good as it could have been. However, if you just look at those stats, where he's sitting in the league, the things that he's won, the progress he's made in the Champions League, any other club would yank your arm off for that, but not Real Madrid. More is expected from them. Mido also said the health of people was far more important than football in the same interview, with uncertainty over when and if seasons will resume. He had this to say about the COVID-19. Soccer is something secondary during the current situation, which of course will affect all teams in the world, but people's lives are more important than soccer. And we all say, hear, hear. That is absolutely true. Right now, people's lives are the most important things, albeit that we certainly miss La Liga. We certainly miss football.
Z. All the rivalry.
Here is Harry Kane for Tottenham. Oh, what a goal! A classic derby goal from Harry Kane. Catch him if you can.
All the stars.
Oh, back heels Liverpool 2 in front. Talk about impudent. Talk about improvisation. Talk about Sadio Mane.
And all the game-changing moments.
And Raheem Sterling rattles it home. And once more, City are in front in a trice.
All the updates from the Premier League on ZiFM Sport.
England defender Kyle Walker faces disciplinary action from Manchester City after reportedly breaking lockdown rules by hosting a party involving 2 sex workers. Walker, who's 29 years old, has apologized and urged people to stay home, stay safe during the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, City said the England defender's actions had directly contravened his responsibility as a role model. It added that the club will be holding an investigation. The government in the United Kingdom has put social distancing restrictions in place to combat the coronavirus. As of 9 a.m. on Sunday, that's yesterday morning, 47,806 people have tested positive for coronavirus in the United Kingdom, with 4,934 deaths. City statement read, Manchester City Football Club are aware of a story in a tabloid newspaper regarding the private life of Kyle Walker in relation to a breach of the United Kingdom lockdown and social distancing rules. Footballers are global role models, and our staff and players have been working to support the incredible efforts of the NHS, that's the National Health Service, and other key workers in fighting the effects of COVID-19 coronavirus in any way we can. Kyle's actions in this matter have directly contravened these efforts. We are disappointed to hear the allegations. We note Kyle's swift statement and apology, and will be conducting an internal disciplinary procedure in the coming days. So Kyle Walker is in all sorts of trouble in England, and his actions will be frowned upon by communities who are doing their best to try and mitigate against the impact of the coronavirus. So one thing that they're trying to do in Europe is to flatten the curve. You can only flatten the curve by staying indoors and making sure that the infections don't spread, which is something that we have tried to implement here in Zimbabwe with the 21-day lockdown that we are experiencing. So Kyle Walker, he is a guy who's one of the most experienced players at Manchester City, one of the most experienced players in the English league, in truth, after having spent so many years at Tottenham Hotspur, and a full England international, a senior pro at the national team. A lot is expected of him. A lot of people look up to Kyle Walker, not just fans who adore him as a player, but also young pros who are coming through the system, young players who are in the academy at Manchester City. No doubt some who rubbed shoulders with him whilst he was at Tottenham Hotspur will be looking at him. Some of the England junior internationals will be looking at this guy and saying, you know what, you lead us. We watch you and we follow what you're doing. And here he is, of course, caught flouting some regulations and just getting involved in all sorts of trouble. And one of the things, of course, that's very interesting are the sordid details behind this story. So it's not just about flouting the coronavirus lockdown rules and social distancing, but it's also the fact that, hey, this guy was having a bit of a slap and tickle, at a time when he's not really supposed to. So interesting times in England. Jack Grealish last week also caught in similar shenanigans. Now, he didn't have a couple of hookers. He decided to go and see a mate, or at least that's what he says. Then he was involved in an accident and also had to apologize and issue out a statement at Aston Villa regards his actions. And so footballers are role models, and they are judged according to a higher standard. And they're expected, of course, to really be role models out there, model how to live out as a responsible citizen, as a responsible member of the community. And Kyle Walker and Jack Grealish have been found wanting. So very interesting times ahead. They will always be judged, of course, a lot harshly. But on the flip side, one also has to consider that, some of us, even as we're in this 21-day lockdown, I was saying to someone, you're the one who has made the choice to stay indoors because it's really taxing. And you can only feel for people, for example, who are in prison. And Kyle Walker is a guy, he's a single man, he's staying by himself, and obviously he's got lonely. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm just being real here, guys. And this is what's happening. There's a lot of loneliness out there. Jack Grealish, the same thing. That's what he talked about as well. That, listen, I was sitting at home, I got bored, a mate of mine called, I decided to nip over. And so it's the same thing with the likes of Kyle Walker. It's easier to go through this lockdown in the company of family, in the company of perhaps, a flatmate, a housemate, or friends that you're living with. But when you're by yourself, inevitably it's going to be a bit of a drag, and inevitably you might be tempted to do some of these things that the likes of Jack Grealish and now Kyle Walker have been caught doing. So it's really, really is concerning. And that is why I just urge people out there, check on your neighbors, check on your friends, check on your teammates, check on whoever you can at this moment. I know we are exercising social distancing, but hey, that's why these phones and why these social media apps are there. Just reach out to a friend, find out how they're doing, how they're keeping, so that we don't end up flouting these lockdown rules because we are bored or because we are lonely.
Z. The Nerazzurri, the Black and Blues, Inter Milan.
It's Romelu Lukaku, and it was never in doubt. He's a beast at the best of times, but this season he has become a monster.
The Giallorossi, the Yellow and Reds, AS Roma.
Velotti has a go! Tremendous hits! That's what he's capable of.
La Viola, the Purple Ones, Fiorentina.
Franck Ribéry seals a glorious win for Fiorentina with a sumptuous goal at San Siro.
The Bianconeri, the Black and Whites, Juventus.
Ronaldo seals yet another 3 points for Juventus.
Tough yet colourful. The best of Italian football on Z.
The head of the Italian Football Association believes the Serie A season has to be settled on the field if they are to avoid an avalanche of litigation. The league season has been suspended since the 9th of March due to the coronavirus pandemic, which has claimed over 15,000 lives in Italy. And although several club presidents have suggested the season should be called off, FIGC President Gabriele Gavina says it must continue when it is safe to do so. He's quoted as saying, "We are working on a whole series of possible solutions to manage the situation in the best possible way." Finish in September, October, that is one hypothesis. It's a way to avoid jeopardizing not only the 2019-2020 season, but also the 2021 season. Now, Gravina explained that if the current season was to be abandoned, Italian football could suffer an avalanche of lawsuits to which they will be subjected by all those who could be considered damaged in their rights and interests.
Z. Horsepower unmatched. Torque to beat the best. Speed unrivaled. Sleek and easy on the eye. Let's get behind the wheel of football engineered to perfection. The Bundesliga, made in Germany.
Bayern Munich players returned to training today for the first time since the Bundesliga season was suspended due to the coronavirus pandemic. Bayern will train in small groups after the German Football League recommended that clubs should not return until at least the 5th of April. The German top flight has been on hold since the 13th of March due to the coronavirus pandemic.
Promised you a jam-packed, loaded show, and we have delivered. Let's make a date tomorrow, and until then, take care of yourself and stay safe.